What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Tailgate. I am your host, Michael Quattromani, and I am very happy to have you here. If you enjoy listening to what I say, then make sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you never miss an upload. Also, make sure to check out the podcast on Spotify if you get the chance. If you get sick of seeing my face, you'd rather hear my voice, then go, by all means, go listen to it. And make sure to also subscribe to my other podcast, The 411. I will leave a link to it down below. As always, DM me any questions or topics you want me to cover in upcoming podcasts, and leave a like because it means a lot to me and it would make me happy. So, in this episode, I'm just going to give my predictions on the Celtics versus Raptors second round series that we're going to have. Ladies and gentlemen, bring out the brooms. Bring out the brooms. Celtics annihilate the Sixers in 4 games, sweeping them and advancing to the second round. I'm going to give basically just my biggest takeaways from the series and things that you should really focus on in the series against the Raptors. So, Jayson Tatum is the next best thing in the Eastern Conference. This guy is legit. If you haven't known by now, this guy is for real. In the series versus the Sixers, he averaged 27 points per game on 49% shooting. 50% shooting. 27 points per game, almost 10 rebounds per game. He also shot 42% from the 3. He also made big shots when the Celtics needed him to. When they were in a hole in Game 1 and Game 2, he got him back in it. Him and Kemba Walker, but mostly Jayson Tatum, made those clutch shots to get them back into the game. I want to talk about Kemba, though. He is the third All-Star. He is the best third All-Star in the NBA. He is the perfect player that can complement Tatum and Brown. The best guy to do it. We saw that Kyrie Irving couldn't do it. He was just too all about me and isolated, and he just wasn't the answer. I don't think that Isaiah Thomas would have been the answer either. He seemed more, isolation and just not being able to really get his teammates into the game. I think Kemba is the perfect player for the Celtics. He just allows them to grow, and he allows Tatum and Brown to have the ball while also dominating on offense and being a dominant force. He has been the most efficient Celtic in the playoffs so far, as he has shot 50% or better in 3 out of the 4 playoff games so far. And that's what they need. They don't need a guy that is either going to put up 10 points or 40 points. They just need a consistent 18 to 23 point guy, and that's Kemba Walker, and he shoots 50% of the field. He is perfect for them. The Celtics, they also did a really great job in dealing with Embiid. That was the biggest thing that I stressed coming to the series is you got to figure out an answer for Embiid because he's their team. They have okay perimeter shooting and Josh Richardson, Tobias Harris, those guys can shoot the ball, but Joel Embiid is a 7'3" center who is a force to be reckoned with, right? They didn't necessarily stop him. He did average 30 points per game, which isn't stopping him, but they forced other players to win the game. They forced guys like Al Horford and Josh Richardson to step up and make a basket, but they couldn't. Al Horford had 5 points in the first 2 games on average. He did not play well. Josh Richardson had only 38% field goal for the first 2 games. He didn't play very well. The Celtics also did a fantastic job of making others shoot the basketball. That's something that they hadn't done earlier in the season, but they did in this series. They made other people named Joel Embiid shoot the ball. In Game 3, Shake Milton took 18 shots. I don't even know if you've heard of the name Shake Milton before this series, but he took 18 shots when Embiid only took 20 that game. So the probable 5th or 6th option on the Sixers only took 1 less shot than their best player. 2 less shots than their best player. That's nuts. The sweep over the Sixers tells me one more thing. The small ball lineup in Boston works. They beat one of the biggest teams in the NBA with ease. 6'10 Al Horford and 7'3 Joel Embiid and 6'10 Ben Simmons in play. But 6'10 power forward and 7'3 Embiid, that's tough to play against, But they beat them, swept them 4-0. And none of the games were nail-biters. I mean, the game 1 was, but outside of that, none of them were that close. Tendency and skill-wise, the Bucks are eerily similar to how the Sixers play. They both play very aggressive basketball, both drive to the hoop, like Embiid does, like Simmons did in the regular season. They both drive to the hoop with efficiency, kind of like Giannis does. Now they go on to face the Raptors, which are a very different team from the Buccaneers. And before I get into the Raptors, I do want to cover one more very interesting thing that took place today news-wise in the NBA. Brent Brown, the coach of the Sixers, was fired today. Okay, I think that is a very interesting news piece, figuring how... I actually have a little bone to pick with all 76ers fans who are really wanting Brent Brown out of the door, because I just have a few questions, okay? Was Brent Brown the person that got rid of all your shooting? Did he get rid of J.J. Redick? Was he the one that traded away Jimmy Butler, your second best shooter on your team, in exchange for basically a worse edition of Jimmy Butler and Josh Richardson? Was he the one that decided not to pay Jimmy Butler and give the money to a player that had really only been good for one season on a team that wasn't named the Philadelphia 76ers in Tobias Harris when they gave him $180 million? Was Brett Brown the person that gave Al Horford, a 35-year-old aging power forward, $108 million? Was Brett Brown the person that had to deal with Joel Embiid being injured for basically his entire career and Ben Simmons missing the entire playoffs? The biggest complaint you have about Brett Brown is that he's not a situational coach. That's it. He's not the reason why the 76ers have no shooting. The reason is because Elton Brand, the GM, got rid of all their shooting. Got rid of all the playmakers on their team. Got rid of their closer in J.J. Redick. Didn't sign back Jimmy Butler when they really could have. And they decided to sign back Tobias Harris, who, in my opinion, wasn't worth the money at all. And they decided to take in Josh Richardson, who, again, had really one good year on the Heat and didn't deserve the money that Jimmy Butler would have had. And then you're going to blame Brett Brown for Joel Embiid's injuries and Ben Simmons not being able to stay healthy. But then you go on to fire him because he's the scapegoat. Why don't you fire Elton Brand? Okay? I'm sick of all the people that say, oh, Brett Brown was only good during the, rebuilding process. He can't win in big situations. He can't take him to the next step. How do you know? How do you know that? They lost last year as the 3 seed to the defending champions, to the champions of the league they lost. And you want to just kick him out the door. They did the same thing to Billy Donovan in Oklahoma. When he lost because Russell Westbrook played bad, Billy Donovan is awful, get him out of there. Well, they stuck through it. Russell Westbrook left, and now they're the 5 seed. And tonight, as I'm recording this, they just evened up the series with the Thunder. Russell Westbrook's team now. And Chris Paul, they had a 0.2% chance of making the playoffs. But because of Billy Donovan, and because of the supporting cast that he built, and the GM built, they're now in the playoffs and have a chance to make it to the second round. Series tied at 2. Brad Stevens, Celtics coach, right? They bring in, he was a fantastic coach. Before Kyrie Irving was here, he was getting the most praise. He's the smartest coach in the NBA. Next, Greg Popovich, right? Kyrie Irving comes in. He says the world is flat. And, Brad Stevens can't coach, superstars. Well, now, Kyrie Irving is gone on the Nets, who just got swept by the Raptors in the first round. The Kawhi Leonard-less Raptors team. And now Brad Stevens is being praised as sweeping the Sixers. And he's managing 4 All-Stars. For all intents and purposes, let's consider Gordon Hayward an All-Star. I don't even know if Jaylen Brown made the All-Star team, but he averaged 20 points per game, so he should have. And he was a vital piece to their team. So, explain to me all of that. Explain to me why, Brett Brown is fired even though he lost all of their shooting. His top 2 players were injured. One of them missed the playoffs. And they paid 2 guys that didn't deserve the money. $289 went to guys, $289 million, went to guys that didn't deserve the money. But that's Brett Brown's problem. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, we've seen time and time again coaches be the scapegoat, even though in reality, it's because of the players and the management that can't get it done. This is a players' league. This is a league that is run by players. This isn't like the NFL where Bill Belichick is the reason for the 6 championship rings and Tom Brady's the reason for that. No, this isn't like that. This is, Giannis and LeBron carrying teams to the playoffs. That's what it is. That's when superstars leave teams, the team just becomes irrelevant. That's what this league is all about. So maybe it isn't all about the coach. Maybe it isn't all because of the coach's problem. Maybe it is because of the player's problem. That's something to maybe consider. Or maybe it's because the GM is maybe being a little too much, but being incompetent in signing players that don't deserve the money and trading away valuable players that should be on the team and that have led you to the promised land, yet you're getting rid of them. Maybe you should consider that instead of just blaming the head coach. Because that's when you create a revolving door with coaches. And that's when you bring in new coaches. And when you realize eventually that maybe it isn't the coach's problem, you're already in too deep. And that player is already out of their prime. And then you're back into rebuilding mode. And you have to find another coach that can rebuild. Even though all the way in the beginning, the coach you had was fine. Brett Brown was fine. It was the players that Brett Brown had to deal with that he couldn't do. When you're giving no shooting, and your top 2 players are injured, to lead them to be the 6th seed, not too bad. Not too bad. Just want to leave it at that. So, anyway, I do want to get into the Celtics versus Raptors. Game 1 is August 27th at 6:30 p.m. The Celtics face off against probably the most slept-on defending champion in NBA history. Let's be real for a second. The Raptors, no one is giving them the time of day. Even I didn't give them the time of day, even though they are the 2 seed and are the defending champions. They won it last year. The Raptors had a very similar path through the first round, as they also swept their opponent in the New Orleans Nets, the Brooklyn Nets. But let's be real for a second, they were a little bit easier than the 76ers. The Raptors never had one player, okay? They've never had one player that can just take over a game, like a Luka Doncic, as we saw a few days ago, as he hit that mean step back over Paul George, or a James Harden. They've been doing. They just did it heavily as a team, similar to what the Celtics have been doing this year. I said this in a podcast a few days ago, but when I was talking about whether the Raptors were a championship contender or not, the Raptors don't have a guy that they can turn to late in games, right? They don't have a guy that, when there's 4 seconds left, like Luka Doncic, right? But your argument could be like, sure, yes, Michael, but they have multiple guys, right? But I mean like game winners. I mean like the LeBrons, the Kawhi Leonards, the Giannis's, the Tatums, or even like the Lukas or the Damian Lillards or the Hardens. Those guys that you can trust with 4 seconds left. Right? I can't tell you that I trust Kyle Lowry or Fred VanVleet to go down the floor with 35 seconds left, down by 2, and get you a bucket when you need it most. I can't. But I can with Jayson Tatum. I can with LeBron. I can with Giannis. I just can't with Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, or Kyle Lowry. And eventually that's going to catch up to them, because last season they had Kawhi. They had arguably the greatest player in the NBA last year. They could do it with Kawhi Leonard. But this year, you don't have Kawhi Leonard, so things are going to be a little bit different. And we'll just have to see when the absence of a superstar will catch up to the Toronto Raptors. I do have a few keys to the series that the Celtics need to follow if they want to beat the Raptors, because they can. Like, there's no doubt to me that they can beat this team. But I have 4, okay? So the first one is they have to attack the hoop. So many good things happened when the Celtics attacked the hoop versus the Sixers, and they had a dominant big man. Joel Embiid is a big 7'3" body in the middle of the paint that you have to get over, and that's a hard thing to do. But the Raptors have Marc Gasol, who really, even back to his Memphis days, is really only good on offense. He's not that good on defense. He's kind of like Enes Kanter. Probably a better offensive version of Enes Kanter. He's not too viable on defense. But he also does share time with Serge Ibaka, who is a good defender. But so was Joel Embiid, and they thrived when they attacked the hoop then. So, second, they need to control the tempo. We have seen far too many times when the other team will try to push a tempo and it forces Boston to take bad shots or run into chucking threes for no reason. I cannot tell you how sick I am of seeing Marcus Smart run up the floor and throw up a random three and miss. I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of Jayson Tatum going into ISO mode and not passing the ball for no good reason when he absolutely could just let Kemba Walker run the offense. So, slow down and let Kemba run the offense. Try to find the open man, because 99 times out of 100, the open man on the Celtics is someone you feel comfortable shooting the basketball. Right? I said it probably in the first podcast I made. I am okay with any 5 of the Celtics starters shooting the basketball, with the exception of Daniel Tice. I'm a little bit wary of that. But even go onto the bench. Okay, I'm okay with Marcus Smart taking an open 3 once in a while. I'm okay with Brad Wanamaker driving to the hoop and, trying to catch a foul. Okay, he averaged like 8 points per game in the playoffs. I'm okay with that. Right? The Raptors, they do tend to push the tempo, so don't fall into that trap. And if they can just follow that, I think this team is set up to win. Third, capitalize on punishing Toronto's bench. Boston had the 10th most bench points in the NBA this season, and Toronto had the 6th worst. Ironically, a few days ago, I think yesterday actually, Toronto did set the record with 100 bench points. 100. That's a lot of points, right? But you got to make sure you can outscore their bench by at least 10 points in every game. If you can do that, then you're going to set up the starters a lot better. You're going to give Jayson Tatum and Jalen Brown momentum, and you're going to give them the opportunity to be able to thrive and capitalize and kind of go off of what the bench was doing and be able to kind of like take the baton and keep going and force the Raptors into a hole, because they have been able to make comebacks, but the Celtics don't really let teams get back into games too frequently. I can't tell you the amount of times that I could probably only count on 1 or 2 fingers the amount of times I've seen the Celtics go up by like 15 and then blow it. That doesn't happen a whole lot. But there are teams in the NBA where that does happen. I mean, we saw 2 days ago the Clippers did it. Mavericks were down by 21 without Kristaps. Luka brings them back into the game, wins it, right? Then again, Raptors don't have a player that they can lean on like a Luka Doncic. So maybe that's something else that might catch up to them, and maybe that the time that it catches up to them is a series against the Celtics. Because I think that the fourth and final thing that the Celtics need to do is get Jaylen Brown hot. Jaylen Brown is so crucial yet underrated to this offense. When he plays well, this team wins. I can't put it much clearer than that. When Brown scores more than 25 points in a game, okay, now just remember, he averages 20. So 25 is not that much more than what he already averages, right? When he averages 25 in a game, the Celtics are 13-0. They haven't lost. That's nuts. That's unreal to me. Just make sure that he gets the ball and puts up quality shots. If the Raptors notice that they are trying to feed Brown the ball and then they game plan for it and they try to press on Brown and force it to other people, well, then you can switch back and play towards your best scorer, Jayson Tatum, the guy that arguably has gotten you to the point where you're at, So if you can just follow that, these are my keys to the series. If the Celtics want to advance to the Eastern Conference Championship, which they absolutely can. They are more than capable of doing so, and I think they proved in the first round that they do belong here. So that is going to wrap it up for today. I'm going to come back with my 2-minute warning. So obviously, bring out the brooms. Celtics sweep the Sixers. I love to hear it, because Joel Embiid said it best in 2018. This isn't really a rivalry, right? Celtics just... they beat the Sixers every time they play them. So it feels like a rivalry, but it really isn't. The Celtics win every time. Even back to when Kyrie Irving got hurt and that miraculous Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, and Jayson Tatum team took them to the conference championship, only to get... I hate that loss, Game 7 versus the Cavaliers, when Tatum posterized LeBron, but it's sour, but, I mean, that team is nuts. They were 1 game away from a championship. That's nuts. Or from going to the championship. So, biggest takeaway from the series versus the 76ers, Jayson Tatum, next best thing. Kemba is the 3rd best all-star in the NBA. Like, he's the 3rd all-star in the NBA for any team. I think that the sweep over the Sixers tell me is that this small ball lineup does work, and that maybe it won't in Houston, but it does here, because having 6'8" Daniel Tice at center, for some reason it works, and you can stop guys like 7'3". I keep on saying his height, but like it's just crazy to me. 7'3" Joel Embiid, you're able to stop him, and Bucks are very similar to that. So you just swept a team that is tendency-wise and skill-wise very close to the 76ers. We'll say. Raptors game. Really excited. It's going to, or Raptors series, I should say. Really excited. It's going to be a good series. Whether the Celtics win it or not, it's going to be pushed to at least 6 or 7 games. It's going to be fun. My final prediction, though, Celtics win in 6. I think that they're just too good to lose in the momentum. I think that the Celtics have more momentum than the Nets than the Raptors, just because they beat the Nets and the Celtics beat the Sixers, and that's a bigger milestone than beating the Nets. But I did go off on a little bit of a mini rant why they fired Brett Brown. The Sixers fired Brett Brown. I don't understand it. I really don't. If they fired Elton Brand, I would have genuinely been scared. Because I would have been, okay, 76ers are going to figure this out. And maybe they're going to be a team that is going to be in the Celtics' way and in the Bucks' way. But they fired the coach that led them back to a contender. That's ultimately what they did. Doesn't make much sense to me. Really doesn't. So I think that the Sixers are in a really hard situation right now because they're without a coach, and they're with 2 players that supposedly and reportedly don't get along. Apparently, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons don't like each other. So now you have to make the decision whether you are going to trade one of them. And I think that the guy that would be out the door is Ben Simmons. What are you going to get for him? Are you going to trade him for picks? Are you going to trade him for another young guy that you think that you can win with now? What are you going to do with Al Horford? Because he's now 36 years old. He proved to you he can't do anything in the playoffs. He was in the regular season. He declined from last year. What are you going to do with him? You going to trade him away? Personally, I would. I would not hold on to Al Horford. If someone offered me a second-round pick, I would bow to them, give them Al Horford, and I'd take my second-round pick, and I would take the $26 million that follows with him. Is it 26 or 27? That would have been really quick math. But, and then you got to think about Tobias Harris. He's now $180 million worth. What are you going to do with him? He's a B player. He'll give you 18 or 17 a night for $180 million. That's not worth it. So you're going to try to just swallow the money and hope that you can build a team around him and Embiid? Because I personally, if you want to win a championship, because I think they're in that arena. They're not in like I'm trying to think of a team. Like the Suns arena. You know, where they're like, okay, Devin Booker is the real deal. We think we have something in DeAndre Ayton. We just need the one more piece to put us in a contention area. Then, yeah, they're in a different, place. But the 76ers, they're in there. Like, they're in the place where they can be contenders. They just got to figure it out. And I don't think that Brett Brown is going in the right direction. So that's where I'm going to wrap it up for today. I think that this is going to be it for this edition of The Tailgate. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to this episode, and I hope to see you guys next time. Have a good one. I think I was born inside a cabana with diamonds and gold on top of the phantom.